besides the fact that Federal Medical Center as an institution cannot be funded by itself, we have further hospitals in the city of Montgomery, and this should be considered too. So I gave a proposal to the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, the city and county, how to go by step, involving themselves in trying to get some money for Family Medical Center. Not only that, I think it should involve Elmo County, Lowndes County, and other outlying counties which don't have general hospitals, and they do have indigenous people coming over here. So I think they should get with those people, the governing bodies, those people, and say that we want you to come in to help us, and helping us, you'll be helping Fairview Medical Center.
Our guest is Winton.
The problem is that once this thing is done in this fashion, it's going to be very difficult to prevent it from being done in that fashion every time that a board member comes up. And I think that that leads to an instability in the board, an inability to handle some of the very delicate problems that we have had to face as trustees and all institutions have to face from time to time.
Well, have you and the other members of the old board neglected the, quote, mother campus, as some suggest?
That's a lot of baloney.
Apparently, this is one of the contentions being made that...
That's a lot of baloney. In the country. It's fueled by one of the great medical miracles of our nation, in which
The Dodgers open the scoring in the second. Phil Niekro facing his mound opponent Alejandro Pena with the bases loaded. Pena responds with this slow roller up the middle. That will score Mike Marshall and Greg Brock 2-0 L.A. It stayed that way until the sixth when the Dodgers added some important insurance. Pedro Guerrero jumps all over a Niekro knuckleball for this solo home run to deep left. Los Angeles led it 3-0, and it stayed that way until the ninth, when Dale Murphy led off against Tom Niedenfuhrer with a solo shot to the seats in right. Murph's 31st homer of the year, that cut the lead to 3-1. Then came the controversy. Steve Howe on the mound, runners first and second, no outs. Bruce Benedict squares to bunt, and it looks like he's hit by the pitch. But the umpire says the ball hit the bat first. Benedict does not agree, and he is ejected. Terry Harper had to come in and pinch hit with 2 strikes and struck out for the first out of the inning. Later, runners first and third, 2 outs. Bob Watson barely bounces one through the left side. That scores Chris Chambliss from third to make it 3-2, and the Braves were still alive. Brett Butler is next, but he bounces one right back to Howe to win the ball game. Braves lose a tough one, 3-2 to the Dodgers. LA's lead in the West now is 3 games. Ray Perkins was anxious to get his first game under his belt, and things began well for the Crimson Tide. On Georgia Tech's opening drive, quarterback Stu Rogers goes down under the Bama blitz. Emmanuel King hits him, the ball is loose, and there to recover Randy Edwards at the Tech 20. 3 plays later, Walter Lewis hits Joe Carter out of the backfield. He'll dive it over for a 15-yard touchdown. 7-0, Bama led it early. To the second now, Alabama on the march. Lewis throws to Ricky Moore coming out of the backfield. Moore will break loose for a 36-yard gallop. But the drive stalled with a missed field goal. Still in the second quarter, Lewis gets Bama rolling again. He'll scramble left and find a wide-open Jesse Bendros down the sidelines. It's complete for a 53-yard gainer to the Yellow Jacket 10. The drive stalled, though. Freshman Van Tippen is on to boot this 39-yard field goal. 10-0 Alabama going into the locker room. Tippen added another field goal in the third, and the Tide put it out of reach later in the quarter when Todd Roper pours through to block this Ron Rice punt. Stan Gay is there to scoop it up for a 33-yard touchdown. Tech avoided the shutout in the fourth, but Bama is not denied a 20-7 win over Georgia Tech, the first for new coach Ray Perkins, who looks for better things to come.
Well, I'm glad the first game is under our belt. I'm glad we had a victory. I think we can go from here and have a chance to get better and better each week because of our youth, because of some of our inexperience. It's just a matter of all of us going about it with the right kind of attitude. I don't have any question but what we want, because we have over the last several months. And the attitude that our players have taken has been absolutely fantastic.
Dr. Berry came to address the 103rd convocation at Tuskegee Institute. Her message, which was backed up by University President Benjamin Payton, was for people here to let their voices be heard in Washington.
Next week, on September 15th, which is the anniversary of those bombings in Birmingham, your Senator, Howard Heflin, who's been so good to Tuskegee in many ways, as a key member of the Judiciary Committee, will be voting on whether he approves gutting the Civil Rights Commission. That vote's coming
Dr.
up.
Berry says the issue before the senators is whether she and several other Civil Rights Commission members should be replaced by new people chosen by President Reagan.
And it would be bad for the people of Alabama of all races and people generally for us to go back to the bad old days before we made those civil rights changes. It's been better for everybody to have made the progress, and we've got to do everything we can to make sure that this administration understands that the people are not in favor of subverting and undermining the civil rights laws.
In addition, Dr. Berry says another vote will be cast within a month to decide if the commission should even stay in existence. Once again, she does not count on help from the Reagan administration.
Because we've had a Civil Rights Commission that is independent until now and has been able to monitor and push and shove and force and remind the people and remind the administration and keep the Congress informed, the administration hasn't been able to completely reverse the gains. Every time they've tried to do something, there's been a reaction and they've been stopped.
Simply put, Dr. Berry says the commission is in a crisis, and Alabama will play a key role in determining whether it will continue its work or if it too will be stopped. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News in Tuskegee.
I won't say which sorority.
I know of that's open 24 hours a day. Any just opportunities and possibilities for this are unlimited. Oh God, by your grace, we celebrate the dedication of this prayer. Oh God, we dedicate this prayer tower to your glory already for the things that have happened in the lives of people, the changes that have taken place. We offer our thanks to you for that, for the opportunity of having it here at Fraser. And I pray that you would bless the outreach ministry possibilities of this tower. For every person who contributes. Keep to your left and back out through here, please.
And I was a contract student.
They're standing up for the male sex, and particularly a field which is a growing field, which is
Remarks that we did not do as good of a job as a woman would in that situation. Remarks that our job performance was not satisfactory when we knew it was, and moments of being embarrassed in front of patients and families, done on purpose by the head nurse up there to make us look like, that we weren't doing our job when we were.
On a couple of occasions, she referred to the male supervisor as a puppet, their token male in the system, and was very condescending to me and Mr. Simpkins on several occasions, as he stated in front of families and patients and in other nurses to try and make us look bad.
On another morning, she came in and slapped me off a desk. I was sitting up on the counter, and she came in and slapped me then. And
appreciation of your value to this institution enough to be heard in here. Please stand, all members of the Senate, first, similar in nature to Auburn in this country. This summer, the approval of the Board of Trustees, we've allocated $1.5 million for new equipment for teaching and research. That sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's only a fraction of what's needed. We would have needed at least $5 million to have made a major dent in the problem, but we've made progress. And I'm confident that in our academic programs in the coming year, we'll see evidence of the effect of that. Maintaining and enhancing quality, as is absolutely essential for this state administration, was to try to help in securing additional resources. Now, that's obviously intimately related to what I've just said about program improvement. And there
You think probably if he'd got out the boat and the dog would have went with it? Straight on through. Right here, come right on by the jail, pick up 15 miles down one.
I said I want to get in the house and hear the kickoff for that.
Wow.
doggone jolly.
In Auburn, the Tigers converted a Southern Miss fumble into a score early in the second quarter. Lionel James gets the call from 8 yards out, 7-0 Auburn. The Golden Eagles got their only points of the day early in the second. Steve Clark with his 38-yard field goal made it 7-3. But on the next possession, Bo Jackson caps an 85-yard drive, scoring here from the 10, 14-3 Auburn at halftime. Al Del Greco booted a third-quarter field goal. Then this 44-yard strike from Randy Campbell to Bo Jackson capped the scoring midway through the fourth. 24-3 Auburn beats Southern Miss in the season opener. The Tigers entertain Texas next Saturday on the Plains. In Birmingham, a Georgia Tech fumble also set up Alabama's first score. Walter Lewis to Joe Carter made it 7-0 Bama. Freshman Van Tiffen booted 2 field goals on the day. This one from 39 yards out made it 10-0 at halftime. The kicking game produced the Tide's other tally. Todd Roper pours through to block this Ron Rice punt. Stan Gaya will grab it on the bounce and dash 32 yards for the touchdown. Ray Perkins gets his first win as Alabama beats Georgia Tech 20-7. The Tide plays host to Ole Miss next Saturday in Tuscaloosa.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here together. I want to sign this ball and send it to Ms. Pratt. I want everybody in here to sign it. The great football teams improve when you win. They're not satisfied with their performances.
And for doctors.
The University of Alabama Medical Center in Birmingham is one of this country's leading clinical and research centers and home base for hundreds of medical faculty members, each an expert in a particular field of medicine. For the past 13 years, those experts have been available as consultants to any doctor in the state of Alabama, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, free of charge, through a telephone hotline called MIST, short for Medical Information Service via telephone.
Good morning, Mist Operator.
During the first 13 years of operation, MIST has handled 350,000 calls from physicians. Because of interest from doctors in surrounding states, that service has now gone nationwide. As an example of how MIST works, consider the case of Milla and Paul Beauchamp. They are the proud parents of 2-year-old Eric, but things weren't always so sunny for the Beauchamps. In 1980, Milla gave birth to a baby girl at Druid City Hospital near Tuscaloosa. Unfortunately, the infant was born with severe congenital abnormalities and died soon after in this neonatal intensive care unit. The Beauchamps needed genetic counseling and a process known as chromosomal analysis to accurately diagnose the infant's problem and to learn what the risk was that it would recur if Milla became pregnant again. But Druid City Hospital lacked the resources to provide that counseling and the needed tests. So their family doctor used the MIST hotline to make contact with a genetics expert at the University Medical Center in Birmingham.
When a child has a chromosomal problem such as the Beauchamp infant had, it is likely that the child will not survive very long. So it becomes important to establish a diagnosis as soon as possible, because without a specific diagnosis, no one could tell Mr. and Mrs. Beauchamp the chance of their having an abnormal child with another pregnancy. And this becomes most important to them.
The phone link between Druid City and Birmingham ensured that the proper tests would be done. The genetics experts concluded that there was little likelihood that this problem would recur. This gave the Beauchamps the reassurance they needed to get pregnant again.
In spite of the fear of losing another child or having another child with problems, it was just well worth having another child. Just by looking at Eric every day is just worth it.
Okay.
There is no reason today why any patient should be deprived of expert consultation or modern medical technology.
Details of the alleged beatings are sketchy at this time, but we've been told that 6 inmates were beaten by 5 Montgomery County Sheriff deputies during one of the night shifts last week. County Sheriff's Deputy Lieutenant W.M. Pilgreen gave us this statement about the charges.
There have been some accusations made by some of the inmates alleging misconduct of some of our jail personnel. This is under investigation, and we will have no further comment at this time.
The Sheriff's Office is expected to make results of its investigation public as soon as it's completed. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
Ambassador Wall says the Soviets' version of what happened to the Korean jet is filled with half-truths and lies. He says the Soviets were caught in their lies when President Reagan produced a tape recording of the Soviet pilot who tracked and shot down the jetliner. He also says the tape recording will cost the intelligence-gathering community.
Making this type of information publicly available has dangerous implications for intelligence security, and there are some nervous intelligence people today.
Ambassador Walt says the latest version of what happened, that the Soviets may have fired warning shots, will hurt the U.S. But it doesn't change the fact that the Soviets shot down an unarmed commercial jet and killed 269 people. It's something, he says, that would never happen in the U.S. Ambassador Walsh feels the incident will only deliver short-term benefits for the defense budget and the deployment of nuclear weapons in Europe.
That look at the face of Moscow. The bear that walks like a man is a mean person. But some months from now, memories will slip away.
And Ambassador Walsh says to further isolate the Soviets with trade restrictions would make that bear even more dangerous. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Good evening, I'm Bob Howell, and this is the news for the 12th of September. At this hour, Montgomery County Coroner Dr. Joseph Keith is conducting an inquest to formally determine the cause of death of a man fatally wounded by Montgomery policeman Corporal Donald Jackson, who was answering a burglary call at McMillan Elementary School last Friday morning. The dead man is identified as 27-year-old Darrell Reynolds. An alleged accomplice in the case, 22-year-old Joseph Hogan, was the primary witness in the inquest, which began more than 4 hours ago. Susan Silvernail of our staff is at the county courthouse for this live report. Susan?
Bob, Corporal Donald Jackson, the man who shot Reynolds, just took the stand a few minutes ago. Just before that, the coroner was shown a videotape of the statement 22-year-old Joseph Hogan made to investigators at the time of his arrest. Hogan told the police it was Darrell Reynolds' idea to break into McMillan's school, that Reynolds smashed a window to get into the school kitchen. He said they weren't there long before they saw police patrols outside and heard an officer in the building. Hogan said Corporal Donald Jackson turned on the kitchen lights and told him to surrender. Hogan said he laid face down on the floor and urged Reynolds to give himself up. Hogan said he didn't see the shooting, but said if Reynolds had come out like he did, the shooting never would have happened. Hogan said he assumed but didn't see Reynolds jumped out at Corporal Jackson and that that's what made Jackson shoot. The police repeatedly asked Hogan if Reynolds would have hurt Jackson. And finally, Hogan said yes, if he'd had a chance.
Okay, Susan, we've been going on for more than 4 hours. Is this thing going to move into the early evening now?
I think so, Bob. Both the coroner, Dr. Joseph Keith, and the district attorney, Jimmy Evans, want to wrap this inquest up tonight. They still have several more investigators to hear from. The coroner must determine the exact circumstances of Darrell Reynolds' death, and in order to do that, he will consult with the district attorney first, and that determination may even come tonight, possibly tomorrow.
Thanks a lot. Susan Silvernail with a live report from the county courthouse.
Well, we are predicting a 55 bushel per acre yield this year as opposed to a 66 bushel per acre yield in 1982. And the national production has been reduced by 48%. This is drought and pick, but the Alabama figures of 11 bushels per acre reduction is purely drought related.
That production and the pick program indirectly, I understand.
Well, the drought had reduced the projected yield from 26 bushel to 16 bushel. 82 was 26 bushel, and 83 is projected to be 16 bushel.
The policeman who shot Reynolds, Corporal Donald Jackson, tried to relax with fellow officers before the inquest. But 4 hours later, Corporal Jackson was in tears, his body shaking as he told the coroner what happened early Friday morning. He says he only remembers seeing a shadowy figure, and he feared for his life. 22-year-old Joseph Hogan is a suspect in the McMillan school burglary. Hogan says he surrendered when Corporal Jackson told him to, and he says if Reynolds had surrendered at the same time, the shooting never would have happened. Hogan says he didn't see the actual shooting. After this testimony and more from police investigators, the coroner made this determination about Reynolds' death.
County, it is my opinion, and I hereby find that the cause of death of Mr. Darrell Reynolds is a gunshot wound to the chest, and I hereby order all the evidence presented to the Montgomery County Grand Jury.
District Attorney Jimmy Evans says the case will probably go to a regular grand jury in October. He also says inquests may become more common in Montgomery County.
The facts surrounding and circumstances surrounding a shooting of a suspect at the hands of a law enforcement officer may be such that the facts need to be known. It may be such that the facts need to be presented in a forum under oath and to be rapidly understood and developed.
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Playing in the Paramount, and you couldn't ask for a nicer environment for a symphony concert. It's an old hall, it's beautiful, and the acoustics are excellent, just excellent. And with this orchestra, I think we're going to be making some music. I think if you haven't been to the symphony lately, you should show up.
The problem, according to Trailways, is money, losing money, $168 a day to be exact, by keeping the two routes active.
The reason we're wanting to take it off to start with, nobody's riding it. And so
it's really not any big problem for us that goes. So I don't, maybe they want to wave at it when it goes by. I don't know what, but nobody's using the bus, so that's why we want to take it off.
But the problem, according to the Public Service Commission, is Trailway's right to curtail service without a review.
It's our contention that the federal law applies only where a bus crosses a state line, and you could have a conflict in the state decisions. This bus only runs from Montgomery to Gaston and back, and is not preempted by the federal law.
The two sides took the issue to Judge Kennedy.
Routes were involved in that thing, and you can see that all of the routes involved.
Judge Kennedy agrees with attorneys for Trailways that under the Federal Bus Regulatory Act, the state has no jurisdiction over Trailways in this case because the system is only curtailing service, not abandoning it. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
(1983), I, Pat Evans, have qualified. Our district has long lacked attention to care about their district, their city. Thank you. Questions that you need answered, I'll be glad to answer them. This is my husband, our district, to my satisfaction. I'm sure many people will have different viewpoints on that. I expect a good, hard work with them, for them. Our district has long lacked attention, and now, where's Ferry Road? Having had recent attention to care about their district, their city, and support. Thank you. Big satisfaction. I'm sure many people will have different viewpoints on that. I expect a good, hard work out to make this a success, and I'm willing to give it all it's got, all I've got to make it work.
I think probably the most significant case was in the field of criminal law had shifted from enforcing the rule of we are seeing a balance, or the court is trying to strike a balance between the Supreme Court as being no more evident than what happened $1 billion. That tells you the extent to which our government has grown during the past 3 or 4 days.
We was on the other 2 weeks ago, or 2 months ago, or 2 years ago. And then 800 or 900.
It's going to bring hundreds of thousands of visitors to this community each and every year, and it's going to be a great benefit economically to the whole community in my view. However, it has to be developed in such a way that's consistent with the Elizabethan period.
We think Texas is a great football team, but I'm not sure they're the best team on our schedule. We'll find out a lot about them Saturday, find out a lot about ourselves. And it's a game that we've looked forward to and been excited about playing. Our fans have, I think the news media has, and evidently that folks all over the country, because it is going to be on, I guess, an expanded regional telecast. And we'll just find out and see what happens. That's what it's played for.
You have to figure they'll look at that chart and they'll say, we got to test this secondary.
Well, you know, I think that's right. I think what they'll find back here is a secondary that is young and got more ability than what we played with in the past. I think that they'll find a defensive line that is probably a little better pass rushing defensive line than we've had. So, you know, I would rather see them throw the football against us than I had just line up and run over us, because you got a chance for something bad to happen if they throw it up. You can come down with it, but if they just knocking you off the ball and moving it, then that concerns me more.
On same date, so that I will not implement the opinion and friction that local courtesy, which means that in effect I've had an opportunity, as I indicated to you before, I will not go back to the university. I've retired from the university, except as possibly as a consultant, and he asked me if, in view of my determination.
The Alabama Army National Guard's primary training site at Fort McClellan is a place with growing pains. The Guard will try to ease those pains next month when the new training complex will come online that will double the Guard's present capabilities at the post. General Hornsby had a chance to inspect the unit that will dictate the quality of Guardsmen and the Guard in the future. The Alabama Military Academy is a large part of the Guard's operation at Fort McClellan. It's where future Guard officers and non-commissioned officers sharpen their skills and leadership abilities. One tool the Guard uses in the NCO Academy is this confidence course. The NCOs learn how to complete a task with leadership and teamwork. Increasing the leadership skills of NCOs is a primary objective with the Guard. General Hornsby said the regular Army and the Guard realized in the mid-70s a need for a Guard NCO Academy when junior officers were taking up the leadership duties that should have been performed by sergeants.
And this course was developed to increase the confidence and the proficiency in the non-commissioned officers to get them more back in the role of sergeant's business.
These 94 men and women just completed the Guard's 10-day advanced NCO school, one of 3 schools sergeants will need to advance in the ranks. Staff Sergeant Lucy McQueen says she'll be able to put what she learned at the school to work in her administrative job in Montgomery.
Well, being a female, sometimes you don't get a chance to lead too many men, but they taught us the qualities of leadership, what it takes to be a good leader, the things that I can do so that other people can look to me for leadership.
General Hornsby says with schools like the NCO Academy, once again, sergeants will be doing sergeant's work. Don Phelps at Fort McClellan on the military beat.
At this time, I want to thank again all of you who said with me, and I want to thank the rest of the bucks that some of us, I'm sure I can speak for every member of the commission, and the we can, with the ethics commission and being its chairman, it's a learning experience, and thank again all of you who served with me, and I want to thank the rest of the staff.
The Ethics Commission ruled last year that legislators can't be paid 2 state checks, a ruling that was aimed at lawmakers who also hold jobs in education as teachers or principals. The Ethics Commission ruled that one of the 2 salaries had to be refused. Earlier this year, it was reported that at least 10 of these legislator educators weren't doing that.
And we've gotten a number of checks since the media first brought up that 10 educator legislators had not fully complied with the Ethics Commission ruling.
8 of the 10 decided to comply by refunding their $10 a day legislative pay, which amounts to about $620 apiece for this year's sessions. But Representative Roy Johnson hasn't turned his money back to the state. Instead, he's told the Ethics Commission that he's giving his legislative pay to his school system.
Although we believe Mr. Johnson is doing a very fine thing in turning his legislative salary over to his school system, that the law simply doesn't permit him to do that. Rather, it's to be retained by the state.
Mr. Cooper says he hasn't had a chance to talk to Mr. Johnson about how the commission feels about his actions, and Mr. Cooper says he hasn't heard from Representative Jenkins Bryant about what he plans to do. But Mr. Cooper says he's sure both men will eventually do what's right. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
University's reaction to the vote this afternoon?
I don't know exactly. Basically, my response to it at this particular time is
The governor kicked off the first meeting of the Committee on Humanitarian Services with a speech about the state's new poor, those people who have fallen victims to hard economic times.
In spite of the fact that the economy is improving, we still have hundreds of thousands of people in Alabama that are not getting decent shelter, food, are not being able to live in the fashion they used to live, and therefore, in my judgment, as I said in my inaugural address, that any state or nation that forgets its poor will lose its soul.
The governor says it is the responsibility of both government and the private sector to help.
We who are able to give more have not given more.
The committee is composed of people from government, churches, social service groups, and others. Today they started talking about what they can do to pool their efforts to offer the most help to the most people. One member, who even chastised the governor somewhat for leaving early, says it's going to take a lot more than just talk to solve these problems. It's going to take a real commitment. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News at the Capitol. Once more.
Which meant more than what 10 does now. No other state in the Union had this, and these people, by district attorney here in Montgomery and the other fine gentlemen here with the various police organizations, a fireman of any sort in this country is paid another, his family, a next of kin, is paid a $50,000 gratuity. Now, any of you gentlemen want to make any statement, Jimmy, or any of you folks, I'd go ahead and identify later. There was a resolution introduced by Representative Glenn Browder and in the Senate, Senator Crow. The Union had this, and these people behind me were some of those that were supportive of this movement. No other state had it, and so they're not.
Not be able to cover up and use a smokescreen to hide the fact that he is the hand-picked candidate of the Joe Reids, the Donald Watkins, and all of that crowd. Now,
Looking back on Saturday's 20-7 win over Georgia Tech, the general assessment was that Alabama played good, hard-hitting, aggressive defense, while the offense, although good at times, appeared to be struggling to find itself.
I think we like for people to expect a lot out of us, because our goals are high. But I don't think we played as well as we should have, or as well as we're going to play. I think maybe everybody was a little tight, being that we hadn't run the new stuff in game situations, and we probably weren't quite sure in the back of our minds how we could do.
What is the potential of this offense?
Well, I think we have great quarterbacks, receivers, linemen. I think our overall look is real good, and I think we can be very explosive.
You know, hopefully we will have made some improvements and gotten a little bit more consistent. I think that we have, you know, just through the practices. I think that our players have concentrated extremely well on what we're trying to do, and that's what brings consistency. But I certainly think that we should be more consistent this week and hope so, but we really won't know until game time.
Perkins hopes his offense will perform better this Saturday in Bryant-Denny Stadium when the Crimson Tide entertains Ole Miss. And despite an 0-2 record, Perkins says the Rebels are on the threshold of being a very good football team.
Well, I think they're a much better football team than their record indicates. I certainly don't think they're an 0-2 football team because, and the main reason I feel that way is they've got a better football team from a defensive standpoint than a lot of people give them credit for. They improved dramatically from the first game to the second, from Memphis State to Tulane, and they've got 9 starters on their defensive team back from last year, and they've got some great athletes on that side of the football. I think the improvement that they made from the first game to the second, and we have to assume that they're going to work on their mistakes and work on improvement and making progress from that second game until Saturday, and we're going to have to be ready to face that.
More on the Rebels tonight at 10. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports, Tuscaloosa. Perkins told a gathering of press in Tuscaloosa today that Ole Miss is a deceptive team. They're much better than their 0-2 record indicates. One of the reasons Perkins is concerned is a potentially explosive offense, led by quarterback Kent Austin.
On their offensive side of the football, they've got some fine receivers. It goes without saying that Austin is one of the best quarterbacks in the conference as far as throwing the football and running the football. They're running the option with him, some split-back veer option stuff that he did a great job in the second half against Tulane. Had some big runs.
2 of the Crimson Tide players faced with stopping the Ole Miss offense are Emmanuel King and David Valletto. They look for an explosive game.
They don't look like an 0-2 team on film, that's for sure. They got a good quarterback. He can run the option real well, and we'll have to contain him.
Oh, yeah, it'll be a test, but it'll be a fun test. I like it when they put the ball in there. It's more action for us. They've got 2 pretty fast and big wide receivers and a real big tight end, and we're expecting to have a good time Saturday.
Just how good or how bad is Ole Miss? Well, Coach Billy Brewer feels the Rebels are getting better.
Much better football teams Saturday afternoon in New Orleans than we were the previous week. The intensity, the execution was crisp, and we played well enough to win the football game. Unfortunately, we did not.
A sellout crowd of better than 60,000 will be on hand here in Bryant-Denny Stadium Saturday as the Crimson Tide goes against Ole Miss. Kickoff is 1:30. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports in Tuscaloosa.
That you have a fear that under the present leadership in the mayor's office, too much of our energy and time is being wasted.
Reaction to the vote this afternoon?
I don't know exactly. Basically, my response to it at this particular time is that the Board of Trustees are charged with the responsibility.
Good evening.
The governor says while the economy is getting better, something must still be done to help the many people who are still in what he calls abject poverty.
And I think that those people who are fluent today, in churches who are fluent, who have jobs, it is their duty, their Judeo-Christian concept duty, which they proclaim to be in this state, their duty to help these people that are desperate who have never seen this kind of poverty in their life before.
The governor made those comments as he met for the first time with a new advisory committee on humanitarian services. The group is composed of church, government, and social service leaders from across the state who are to come up with a plan to help the poor, a plan that is expected to shift much of the responsibility from government to the private sector. While it will take some time for the committee to get fully organized, one member suggested it can't take too much time because there are some people with problems that just can't wait. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
A big hive of bees and 2 hives of bumblebees.
I just told her that, you know, because of her color, that she couldn't get the sandwich there, and she still just didn't understand it. It was very painful, and I don't know if it was any more painful to tell her that than seeing the stone mashed in her head that Sunday morning. Both incidents were very painful.
How might Birmingham have changed in those 20 years?
Birmingham has made a lot of changes, but I think it's unfair to just say Birmingham. You see, what happened in Birmingham, but it could have happened at that time anywhere in this nation, see? And that's the thing that usually we don't perceive as having been possible. And in fact, that had a lot to do with my not leaving Birmingham at that period of time, because I realized that it could happen anywhere in this nation. The nation itself needed to have been purged. Now, like we talked 20 years later here about Birmingham maybe having purged it.
Education sometime, more so we'd like them to be. I say that not being critical legislature necessarily, but curriculum matters and things like that, we think this should be
elected by the citizens of those 2 cities. The one glaring exception in numbers is
going out of our schools, exiting the doors of our schools, and going into the working world. We will interface all the...
It is no longer that type board. We'll be talking to superintendents and their boards, urging them to adopt policies where parent competencies are required, particularly where the minimum competency exam is not being passed in lower grades.
The legislature is the super board of education sometimes, more so we'd like them to be. I say that not being
decisions of rectors within the Department of Education, asking for their recommendations as to how these kinds...
Either the local people either elect or appoint superintendents. All the county superintendents, 40 county superintendents are elected by the people.
Out of our schools, exiting the doors of our schools and going in.
In June of '85, there are going to be quite a few students across this state will not graduate as a result of that exam. Nobody knows how many, but there'll be some. Now, when the local board and the state board has all these delegations demanding that we do something about getting these students a diploma, now we know all the public, the employers are going to line up right there with us and support us.
The Alabama legislature is the super board of education sometimes, more so we'd like them to be. I say that not being critical legislature necessarily, but curriculum
Feel are necessary for the young people who are going out of our schools, exiting the doors of our schools establish active involvement and build public confidence in education by maintaining closer and receive these comments and concerns, or to present these to the division.
As to the graduates from high school not being able to read, write, or do simple math. Now that we are seeing the culmination of this program with the exit exam, we're ready
to emphasize that I do not want my comments to be interpreted as reflecting in one way or the other on any individual. This campaign will be a positive one. As to maintaining a working relationship, I believe that for our city to move forward, well, in this regard, I'm no different from any other. I would desire to see these services improved also. However, I would like to take this opportunity. Our responsibility is to keep those departments so equipped and to retain our experienced personnel. Drainage.
I'm Bill Nunn, and I'd like to make a few statements this morning. First, I want to thank my family, especially my wife Glenda and my two daughters. Look at the Fairlane Drive problem as well as Carmichael Road problem. We need to work and solve the Green Acres, Healthton Heights ditch problems that exist at this time. And we're also looking to initiate the building of a Bell Road Fire Station, which is needed in District 9. I have enjoyed serving for these past 4 years and look forward to another 4 years. And all I ask you to do is remember that there's none better than Bill Nunn for District 9. Thank you so much for your support.
To the department, we'll find this. We'll take care of it from there. Get it. Problem between the black community and the white community, and that's. It's been 7 months since this incident, and must have been a ton of newspaper printed about it. Hopefully now we'll get to the point that we'll get a report out of the grand jury. Hopefully they will exonerate the police department, which I know we didn't do anything wrong. And I'm sure that they'll find that the police department didn't do anything wrong, and that they'll eventually report that if everybody does what they're supposed to do. And I understand that they're still having a little problem getting some information from some individuals or one individual. Maybe that will come forth and we can clear the air in this thing shortly. But your police department was 396 speeches in places. And finally I got an invitation to speak to an insane asylum group. and I was doing
and I have a farm in Virginia that's paid for. All because I saw Chuck come out of a motel in Auburn one night. What you do here today, what I saw being done by the volunteers and the people over at the Children's Center where I got my little medal, these are the things that make us a great democracy. It is not the nuclear weapon. It is not the incredible defense system. It is the strength of the individual and the contributions that we make every day.
Lose Texas for the party?
I think that there are two things you can compare it to. My mother says it's sort of like Rookie of the Year, and one of my NCOs says it's sort of the Heisman Trophy of ROTC, and so you can look at it either way you like.
All the sentences run concurrent, so you only get 10 years for whatever you do. And dealing with the convict element. 39% of the total population of this city, a part of that 39% commit 90% of the crime in this city. And I can't get any black officials stirred up enough about it to try to come to the police department, or us get with them. We'll go to them. Need to get some preachers out behind the pulpit and let them look at their neighborhoods and see what's going on. I need to be able to go into a neighborhood and pick up a criminal, or a rapist, or a robber without having to fight the entire neighborhood while we're there. Not the entire neighborhood, but those that don't want to see you pick that individual up. And I'm going to cover some of the Part 1 offenses and give you a breakdown on them.